Grab one of Dollar Tree's smaller mason jars for this lantern decor piece. We're not going to need the top, so we can go ahead and pop that off. And we're already off to a great start. Use any planter you would like for this part. I happen to have one of these square galvanized pieces, and I'm going to be using that. I grabbed it from Dollar Tree, as well as one of these Dollar Tree candle holders. Now, I've already painted this up and I have a transfer on it. Mind all of it, okay? Because we're not going to see it. We're just using it to be able to set our mason jar lantern on top of as its little stool. Floral foam would do the trick as well. To create the lantern look, we're gonna need one of these LED hanging lamps from Dollar Tree. I love how these fit perfectly right into the top of these mason jars, and they have the little button on the top so they're easy to turn on and off. I want to add a little something onto the mason jar, so I grabbed one of these stencils that I picked up off Amazon. You can get them in a pack. I even think I have some down in my Amazon affiliate link in the description box. I'm trimming it down to the size that I need, and I'm gonna grab some painter's tape and cut a whole bunch of little sections, because as you can imagine, it is not going to stay on here easily. So we're going to need to make sure that we're taping this down as much as possible, because it is a plastic stencil. You can obviously create your own so this way they stick on here, and that would probably work better, but I'm a rebel and we're going to use this plastic one. I know this multi-surface paint sticks amazingly to glass, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And I've had a lot of people say that they can't stencil. And a little tip, I do have a how-to stencil video. I can link that down below. A little tip, it doesn't matter what you use to apply your paint. I want you to understand the best way to stencil is to make sure you offload most of your paint to where whatever you're using, whether it's a paintbrush, whether it's a sponge, it is practically dry. If it is almost dry and there is no paint, you're not going to suffer from all that smushing underneath of the stencil, creating a lot of bleed through. Since the jar is circular, I'm also placing my finger very gingerly in different sections that are popping up on the stencil. So this way I make sure that as I'm applying my little pouncer, that the paint is going right over the stencil and not bleeding through. Also, it's a good idea to always remember that you want to keep your glass clean whenever you're working with it. You'll notice here I don't have gloves or anything like that, and I didn't clean my glass, and that's because I'm mostly just keeping the pieces for me and creating them for the ideas for you for the video. You want to make sure if you're doing this at home, you keep your glass clean and you wear gloves so you don't get any of those finger oils onto the glass underneath your paints. A lot of tappity, and later we have a beautiful stencil on our mason jar. I am shoving some greenery in our galvanized bucket piece. Pop whatever you would like in here to finish it up. Also glue whatever you want to glue down. Use your E6000, your Gorilla Glue Gel. I have things just sitting in here for staging purposes for the video to introduce the idea to you at home. And I hope you love it as much as I do. These little glass pieces are one of my favorite new finds at Dollar Tree, and I thought we could easily give them a little bit of love by adding some fabric and some ribbon to them and plopping in some florals. I had this little pattern in my stash, and I love how the top was frayed, so it sold me already because I wouldn't have to fray the whole piece, and just cut out a nice section to wrap around the center of our glass. Of course, I had to make the other side frayed to match the top side, so I did this painstaking task of pulling it apart. Took me about 10 minutes, but I got there eventually. My absolute favorite ribbon stuff, whatever you want to call it, from Dollar Tree is these things. Are these things. They come in all different colors and they really go with anything. Burlap, different patterns, doesn't matter. You can do all kinds of stuff. I even put them in my little floral bundles just to add some filler. Love these. I cut some off and layered them right on top of each other, and then flip this upside down so I could attach it around the back of our piece of glass. Grab whatever kind of florals you want to pop in here. I picked these up recently at Walmart. They had a bunch of picks for like 99 cents, so I cleaned up. I'm florally challenged, so I need all the options I can get. I added a little bit of jute twine in the center here with the bow for a little bit of extra something something. And I love how easy and cute this turned out. These are currently my favorite glass pieces at Dollar Tree. I love how large the pieces are, as well as the raised design that we have around the entire piece. Gives a lot of room to create some DIYs and use these in different ways. I'm going to share two with you right here. First up, you're going to need to pick out a paint. I'm going to be using this letterpress gray from DIY and a pouncer to tappity tap 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 all over this glass. And in case you're ever interested in grabbing any DIY paint that you might see me use, my girl Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Designs sells it, and I keep a link down in my description box for you. I also want to remind you that it's a good idea to wear gloves whenever you're working with glass, and to make sure that you've cleaned it off thoroughly using whatever best practices work for you. A lot of times if I'm going to resell pieces, I'll make sure to take some rubbing alcohol, clean everything down, and I'll wear gloves. This way I don't have any oils from my finger sticking between the glass and the paint. You don't want to have any debris or anything on your glass before you paint. It can always cause adhesion issues later. It only took 2 coats to get these completely covered to where I was happy. And please keep in mind that if you go to paint glass, not all paint is created equal, and you want to use a good chalk paint or a good multi-surface paint, so this way everything's going to stick thoroughly. I love using pouncers for the most part on glass. They give really good coverage and you don't have to do so many layers, but when you get to the top, you always got to suck that up and grab a paintbrush to really get in those creases. These are absolutely stunning, and as you can see, just adding some paint on here with those raised sections, really it gives you a nice high-end look for a couple minutes of work. If you want to kick these up a notch, grab you some Dixie Belle gilding wax and go around those raised edges. It's going to just make everything pop. However, today, I'm always telling everyone if you don't have Dixie Belle gilding wax, just use some paint. So today I'm going to use some paint. Taking this multi-surface, tapping a little bit on my finger just like I would with the gilding wax. Sometimes I use a paintbrush. I'm going to show you that you can do the same thing with this as well and go around those raised edges. Just going to have whatever color you choose to use pop, as well as bring out those designs. You can grab you a popsicle stick or use a paintbrush like I'm about to use the side as well, and dip in a little bit of paint. Make sure it's not oversaturated, so this way you don't have a lot of clumps everywhere, practically dry, and drag it over the raised edges to make it a little bit quicker for you than using your finger. Another easy way to use these little frosted glass cork bottles is to grab some stickers. I have these vintage pieces that I picked up from Temu, and I've been waiting to use them on a few projects, but this one in particular I thought would look super cute if we create kind of like a little junk journal section on the front of one of these glass pieces. I just picked out a couple pieces that looked like they made sense and started layering them. If you want to make sure that your design stays on your glass bottle, don't forget to seal over top of the stickers. You can use whatever sealer works best for you. I usually grab some Mod Podge, put a little layer right over the top, and let that dry, and it's good to go. If you want to reuse your glass bottles, don't put any sealer over them, and you can change out your stickers as often as you want. For this tabletop decor piece, you're going to need a large mason jar from Dollar Tree. Go ahead and remove that lid because we are not going to need it. And I actually have 2 ideas, which is going to require us to basically create a white base. And to do that, I'm going to just take some of this DIY paint in the White Swan and a pouncer and tappity tap 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 all over our jar. And I do want to remind everyone, it's a good idea to make sure your glass is completely clean before you paint it and to wear gloves. And that's all we're going to be doing for this, is painting it a nice solid color. You can use whatever color you want. I thought this would look really nice with the new large stems I seen recently at Dollar Tree. Check this piece out. I have seen some of these suckers go for over $10. So when I seen the large stem, I was like, we're gonna grab that up, and just plopping it in a pretty jar looks stunning. In case you didn't know, white bases make perfect backgrounds for decoupaging, especially if you're doing a napkin or some tissue paper like this. This is TDS Decoupage tissue paper. It is called Large Fancy Stamps and Labels. I'm going to just take a little bit of water on some paintbrush and carefully trace out one of the designs. Whenever you go to decoupage over paint, it's a good idea to make sure it is completely dry, just like I'm doing here, and there is no chalky residue. I'm gonna just use some Mod Podge for the medium on this and a fan brush for our application. If you're not familiar with decoupage, no worries. I do have links down in the description box for a whole playlist with tons of help for you. Go ahead and check that out. Most of the time I like to say less is more, and I apply just a small amount of medium and then press in one section to get it adhered, and then continue to do the same thing. You can use different little tools to help you apply. I'm just using my finger with this paper. It's fairly easy enough to manipulate, just using your finger and pressing along the bottle. I'm not worrying too much about wrinkles. If you are, make sure you're using some cling wrap or a dry sponge to help press that out. The main reason I love using fan brushes is it's thin enough to have a small amount of medium and just go around the edges. This is really helpful whenever you're decoupaging a napkin, because on the edges it's super thin and you want to make sure that it is completely attached. It gives a really seamless look, especially if you're fraying anything and you're trying to make sure that it blends to the backgrounds. So this just helps make sure that there is a really good connection between whatever you're decoupaging and your surface. Another tip I like to share with people, if you're trying to blend around the edges, you can usually see some separation between the napkins or tissue paper, even regular paper. I like to take a pouncer or a paintbrush, even if you have a small makeup brush, and kind of get a little bit of that dry brushing going on, and tappity tap 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 all around the edges, blending out into the paint. If you want to seal this up, you go right ahead. I would wait at least 24 hours to give everything a little bit of time to cure, to ensure that there is no tearing of whatever you've decoupaged onto your piece. I was lucky enough to find some of those amazing wood looking chargers at Dollar Tree and just thought this would look like such a beautiful idea for a tabletop decor piece. As always, people, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today, and until next time.